He's on her way, so that's good. That's good. And did we hear anything from Charity? Is she coming tonight?
I'm here.
She's here.
Oh, she's here. Sorry, I missed you.
It's okay.
Where you at? Okay, I see you. All right, I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I know we all have questions on this wastewater facility. We didn't get a chance to answer all those the last time when Kurt was here, but I understand tonight Kurt is not going to be with us, but Chris is going to be with us. So he will answer some of our questions, I'm sure. So I will go ahead and start this meeting. And whoever wants to start, let's get into the questions at hand. Anybody got questions up first? Paul?
Well, yeah, I've got some. Based on the meeting that we had with the planner and knowing what the urban growth boundary is, knowing how things are zoned, I guess my first question is, based on that information, do we know what the potential or what the estimated population could be in Estacada? And are we designing the wastewater treatment plant to handle what our current urban growth boundary could handle?
Sharing. The answer is yes. Well, we don't know for sure, but Kurt, because the information in the plan was based on the Portland State statistics. And at the time we were talking about that, Charity asked that same question. And Kurt said, once the plan is done, then we will reevaluate that. And Kurt intends on using a multitude of information to pull that together. But he is very, he is going to build this plant where it would, for the next 20 years, provide Estacada, definitely. I mean, because he knows what the growth has been out here. So he's looking at numbers that are probably going to overestimate, because it already, this year, it actually has slowed down a little bit. We've been sending you guys those updates, but he will overestimate and build this plant so it will function for a future population. So those numbers you will review. Once we decide on some issues, he'll start with that design and getting those numbers together, and you'll get to see that before we go further on the plant. So, and if I got a couple more questions, what do we need to decide tonight? What do we? This is kind of a discussion to see. We have to decide on the next step is to decide where we're going to put it. Because then that's when design can start and engineering can start on the plan. But we have to know these things before we can even go out for funding. Okay. Because we have to know how much we're going to fund for. So if we keep it at and that this is all in here, if we keep it at the shop site, wherever we build it, the plant's going to keep running where it is until the new plant is done, wherever we build it. So that's not going to change that. Wherever we build it, there's going to be a cost of demolition that isn't in this amount in this. We're going to demolish it no matter where we build the other one. The only difference, if we don't build the other one at the shop site, we will have to, one of the added costs of moving it is a pump station at that site, because we'll have to pump everything that goes there now is still going to go there. But if we don't build it right down the street on the same outfall, we'll have to pump it to wherever we build it. So there will be a pump station there. And then the outfall, if we move it, there's going to be an extra pump station. There's going to be the outfall. Those are the extra 5 million that you see between the two costs. It's about 17 million to do it at the plant, and it's a little over 21 million to move it. That's what that difference is. But also to move it, that's not in here, is the cost of land. We'd have to go somewhere and buy property. We have to get easements because the outfall will not be, the advantage to having it at the shop property is you can use that same outfall pipe. Yep,
And by your outfall, this is the outflow pipe. that
Yes.
Kurt talks about.
the pipe that takes the liquid, the clean liquid, and puts it
Right.
back in the river.
Right now, it's above the dam. If we move
Yes.
it to the industrial park, it'll be below the dam.
That's true. So, but we'll use the same pipe if we leave it here. And we'll have to build a new pipe, which means we put a storm sewer pipe in out at the industrial park. And we had to make agreements with 3 people easements for that pipe to go out to the river. And then we have a mixing study that will have to be done because we're going to change where it's coming out. So they have to, there's a study that they do to determine what your standards are going to be for letting it out there, how it's going to mix with the water, where, how far out in the stream is it going to go, what the, and then we also have to work with Clackamas County. Clackamas County is pretty good to work with when it comes to water and sewer or storm.
The mixing zones. Can you guys hear me?
Mixing zone. that's
The
what it's
mixing
called.
zone study has to take place before anything. So we have to do that study if we were to move the location. And then that has to be approved by DEQ before we can even come up with any
Yeah.
design plans.
Yeah. And then the Clackamas County, for some reason, doesn't like sewer stuff in their, like, urban sewer in their areas. And so, but it's not impossible, but that's also not even in our UGB where we'll be crossing to the river, which makes it a little bit more, because if it was in our UGB, we could think about annexing those into it to make it so we wouldn't have to work with the county. But since that's not in our UGB, we're going to have to go across there. So those are some of the, that's kind of the differences. I worked up because I know it's going to be cost. I think Justin sent a question in about what are we looking at if we move it and have to spend that much more money? And I'm only going to tell you, I only did the construction costs. I didn't add the purchasing the property, and because I don't know what all that's going to be. But so if we look at, there's 2 ways you can finance this. Of course, we're going to try to get some grants, and we also can use some SDC funds, which our SDC fund is healthy. It's, I mean, when I talk about SDC fund, we might get $1 million out of it to reduce it $1 million. But let's say we didn't get any grants in any, just so I can give you an idea of the difference of the cost breakdown for repayment. Whatever is left, you can do a revenue bond, which is paid by the users in their monthly water bill. And that's what we did when we did the 1980 bond for the plant upgrade to the plant this time. It wasn't near this though, because the plant was there. We were just doing upgrades. But we did a revenue bond at that time, a 10-year revenue bond actually. But the water plant upgrades that we did in 70 or in 92 to 95, we did a GO bond, which means it's taxes. It's based on your per thousand. When you get your tax statement, you'll see there's a small bond, GO bond there for the city of Estacada. That's for our water plant. And that has to go to a vote of the people if you do a GO bond. A revenue bond is just an ordinance, so, or a rate increase to pay for that. So I worked up, and this is very raw because, yeah, I kind of had to guess in 2 years, how many users are there going to be on the system? Because that would affect for the revenue bond if you were going to charge the users. I also had to see, project the value of our city properties to do the property owner per 1,000 units. So what I came up with is we have 1,658 units right now, sewer units that we bill for. So I added 300. I said in 2 years, here I better scoot over because my keep turn. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh. In 2 years, we're gonna, I figured 150 homes, which might be more because that's from our old and it is slowing down, but so 300 more homes. And then I thought, oh, there might be a business or two. So I added another 50. So I added 350 more users. So that put us up to right at 2,000 users. And if you did it in the same place at the shop building, it would be a revenue bond would increase the monthly sewer bill $33.25. And if you move it and do the extra 5 million, it would be $43 a month increase. That's the increase, not the amount. That's how much it would increase to pay for that. And that's over a 40-year period, because usually your loans for this type of thing are a 40-year loan. Of course, a revenue one, you could do less, and then if you went with a GO bond or taxes, it would be $1.60 per thousand in tax money for leaving it at the shop. And it would be $2.03 per thousand for moving it. Both of those end up right around $450 a year, either per user or per, if you have a $300,000, I used a $300,000 home, $450 a year for either way. They both come out to about the same for a $300,000 home. Now for a older home that you aren't, paying as much. And also when you look at your taxes, you aren't really getting paid the value of you aren't paying taxes on the value of a house. It's much less. So that number might be a little bit more because of that. Anyway, that's just kind of a comparison. That 450 is if it stays at the shop, and then it would be more if you moved it accordingly.
Hey, Joel, you got a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of them. So a couple things, Denise, when I was looking and doing some research, there was a recent project over by Boring from Portland where they got about a $40 million loan at a below market interest rate from the EPA. And then from there, their plan was projecting to use grants ongoing to reduce the cost that it's going to cost to the people in the area. So while we're calculating the people to be completely paying for it, have we calculated any sort of grants, low cost EPA loans, EPA grants, anything like that into there to reduce that cost?
Yeah, when I did this, I used 3.5%, which is pretty low. I don't even know if we could get that low, but I just had to guess it.
I believe the EPA was granted a loan at like 1.5, I think is what it was when they gave it.
Yeah. I mean, that's all stuff we can look at. It's still, you can kind of just see the difference no matter how much the loan is, that there will be a little bit of difference in the 5 million. Yeah.
And
I have no idea what we can get for a interest rate.
I think when the numbers are going to have to be finalized in the end, it will cost more.
Yes.
I think the big thing we want to look at is what it was said during the last meeting that if we put a plant where we're at, and in about 10 years, we're going to have to build another plant. That's what he said. So he did say that if we built in a new location, which is out there in industrial area, that would be able to be expanded as needed to be able to incorporate any changes in the urban growth boundary or any additional use that's not currently be done. But he was talking about how if we built where we're at now, in about 10 years, we're going to have to build a second one.
Yeah,
And
I'll
that's gonna
have to
cost
confirm that because Kurt's the one that is proposing this site, and in all his conversations to me, it was going to last for years. So I'll ask Kurt that question and get that back to you guys.
Yeah. He was pretty clear about it. So I asked a question at the time about it. So and I clarified at the time. So he did say there would have to be another one built as we expanded out. So my thing is, if it's going to have to build additional plant to deal with, more urban or whatever comes into it, it just seems like fiscally responsible for the next 20 years, just looking at that, to build one plant that can expand and we can put the shops on there. Plus that opens up 2 properties that we could either look to expand a park on, or we can look to sell those properties and possibly pave a part of this plant. So that's just kind of what I was looking at it there.
Yeah, I will clarify with Kurt. I I just can't imagine he's asking us to spend $20 million on something that's gonna last 10 years, but I'll confirm with him that.
Anybody else have any questions? Paul?
I thought he had said that we may need to expand if we needed to move the urban growth boundary out. I thought that was we may need to expand down the line.
I'll get a clarification on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Joel could be right, though.
Yeah.
Clarification would be helpful.
My understanding was that if there was, or that the current property, the public works property would be sufficient, they could expand on that property. That's what I understood from the last meeting, is they could expand, from what Kurt said, they could expand on that property to make it sufficient for,
Yeah.
you know.
Chris, you might
If-
have some.
If we
input
go
on
with
that.
the membrane filtration plant, which is what I think we should go with, it's the newest and greatest technology, and it will be able to handle any new upcoming regulations DEQ throws at us. That only requires, for the size that he's planning to build right now, it's only a 50 by 50 tank that he has to build just for the membrane part of it. That's not the entire plant. And you can easily expand onto that if we need to later on down the road.
That's what I understood too.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get clarification on that and some
And-
mapping. Kurt has a thing he can kind of put it on the property, and I think it will be helpful to get a picture of how this would all fit on that property from Kurt, and I think he can do that, including because we put up a new pole barn out there not very long ago, which we intend to keep because that's where we store a lot of the trucks and stuff, and it's so new. So there is a lot of the property that we don't use that's out from the shop now that, will, plus we'll demolish the 2 acres that the plant is on now, which we don't plan on doing anything now, which would also be available for any expansion in the future. But I'm going to talk to Kurt because I have no idea. So I have no idea how big this thing is or what it needs. So I'm going to just stop it at that, and I'll ask Kurt to give us kind of a picture of how it would fit on there.
Okay. Joel, you got your hand up again?
Yeah, so I think this is one of those things where we really need to get the community input on this, because it's going to be their dollars that they're paying for it. It's going to be where it's at. It's going to be affecting the park, their places where they live, how they drive in. I can't count the number of complaints I've had about the fact that we have a sewage plant when you first come into Estacada. So, and whereas even if we move it across the street, it's still there. You can try the hiding, whatever else. The smell's still going to be there. It's still a sewage plant right next to a park and pretty near some homes. Industrial park has a lot of good benefits to it, but yes, it does cost an extra $5 million. That's a big chunk of change. Even if we sold the properties, let's say we got best case, we got $3 million out of those 2 properties, and we're able to offset. That's still $2 million additional. And I'm all about fiscal responsibility. But at the same time, I'm also about listening to what the people of Estacada have to say. Like I said, I've heard so many people talking about how they hate the fact that the sewer plant's there. We shouldn't really be inviting in the community heavily into this one through same thing we did with like the marijuana thing, polls, open houses, town halls, whatever it is. Have them come out and talk to us, because it's their dollar that they're spending, and it's their input that matters, not our input. It's everybody else's input that matters. We're just here to help make that final decision. But if we don't have their full-on input on this, I don't think we can make a good decision, because this is not just a fiscal piece. This is also the unseen cost of what's been the unseen desire of the community that we can't really put a word to, because we don't have that information yet, I think. And
Okay.
so.
All right. Thank you, Joel. Justin, do you have a question?
Yeah, maybe more or less just some statements too, and some questions as well. So first off, I would be curious, I'd like to see Kurt's layout, obviously. One kind of concern moving it closer to the water that I would definitely address. And I think moving it over there is probably going to be, I don't know, that's kind of where I'm leaning right now, just to be honest. But moving it over there, I would definitely want to be careful with visual. We're pushing really hard for our water, our, people getting on there with kayaks and our, lake and everything. I would hate to make something that didn't look appealing or at least
Mhm.
blocked by trees right by the water. So I think that would be one of my concerns is how it looks by the water. And then, obviously the smell, Kurt talked about a way of taking that smell and blowing it, way up into the air where it's not going to be affected. I mean, I've lived in Estacada my entire life, 36 years. Yeah, I've heard some complaints about the smell of it during summer at times, but I don't hear a ton of complaints. I mean, I definitely think that if we could move it off and away from the highway, I think that that's going to be a better option, and I think that'll take away most of the complaints of the visual look of a sewage plant right off the highway. But I guess I would still be concerned with what it's going to look like to the floaters and fishermen and raft, all that stuff that's on the river that we're pushing for. So that's really all I kind of have for now.
Yeah, thank you. We'll let Kurt know that so he can send something maybe that show you what it might look like.
Okay, and I have one question before we move on with this. We're gonna move Public Works, is that right? To put that there?
We're gonna keep Public Works with it if it's moved there. If the plant moves, we're gonna leave Public Works where it is. Yeah.
Okay, so Public Works is gonna stay in with the sewer plant when it's in there?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
That's
Okay,
the plan.
Or
All right.
Sorry, the other thing too, I forgot the industrial park too. I would want to talk to the businesses out there more too and kind of hear from them. I mean, I would hate to slap this thing out there and then our industrial park goes, no pun intended, to crap, so.
okay, Paul?
I think it'd be worthwhile for us to maybe even on our own to go out and check out some existing sites where these plants are currently. I think I understand, does Canby have one?
Yep.
And it's
Yes.
out next to their disc golf course
Mhm.
out there. And then Kalama has one too. I went out and checked that one out this
Mhm.
past or 2 weekends ago.
Mhm.
There's a McMinimum's right out there. They've got a visitor center right there. There's a marina right there. There's a boardwalk right there. So all this stuff, and McMinimum's has outside dining right next to it too, or right across the parking lot. We didn't notice anything, but I know you don't notice anything every time when you're at Timber
Mhm.
Park either. But it seems to me that if they can have one set up there and have a McMinimum's that was just absolutely packed on a Saturday at 2 p.m. with people lined up 50-minute wait to sit outside. There may be something to this, what Kurt's saying about the smell not being as bad or bad at all compared to what we're facing now. I'm torn also, to be honest with you. I like the idea of it in the industrial park. But I also like the idea of getting something in place that is, especially if it lasts 20 years, like Kurt may have said, we'll get that clarification. But if we can have something in there at a more affordable price, I think that would be a better use of taxpayer dollars myself, but I'm definitely open to learning more for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody else got anything here to add in?
I just arrived, but I was listening to conversations in the car on the way here. Something I wanted to point out, Denise, you gave us some numbers earlier about how many people were connected currently to the sewer system. And in the executive summary that Kurt provided in the wastewater treatment update, he said that in 2020, we actually had 2020 sanitary sewage units. So we're already over the 2020, but then additionally in the executive summary, he pointed out that currently local developers have approximately 1,500 residential lots either approved or in the planning stages in numerous developments throughout the city limits. So theoretically in the next, and when we approve a subdivision, we approve them for 5 years. So theoretically in 5 years, we could have upwards of 3,520 units actually connected to our sewage plant. I just wanted to make sure we were working with accurate numbers. we're not projected to hit 2,000. We've already hit 2,000 sewer.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out where he got those, because I just talked to Tracy today for the number and it wasn't that, so I'll discuss that with him.
Yeah,
But
I would really love accurate
Yeah.
numbers.
for these numbers, I only went 2 years out, because that's when we would be taking the loan out. So, yeah, 5 years, we might have a lot more. If you have a GO bond, as you get more people, it goes down per thousand, because more people are paying, or wait a minute, no, a revenue bond. If you have a revenue bond, it goes down. The GO bond, your value of your land in the city limits does increase. It's been an average about 9%, I think. Last year was 9%. And so, yeah, so as that goes up, as houses get built and the value goes up, you also will see a decrease per thousand
Yeah,
as growth happens. So you might start out here, but it might end up being less.
that's the
Yep.
hope.
Yes.
That's the
Yep.
hope. My real question to you, Denise, is in talking about all the different funding mechanisms, and you had talked about rate increases in the form of a revenue bond,
Mhm.
also the GO bond where we actually go for property taxes.
Mhm.
Is there a reason that we're not considering raising the cost of the SDCs for sewer? I only ask because our neighbors in Sandy, in 2020 actually raised their SDCs for the sewage from like 1,800 per home to
Mhm.
like 4,300 per home. I'm trying to find the exact number. I did print out some stuff from the city of Sandy, in addition to the revenue bond that they put on the actual sewer bills. Is there a reason that we're not talking about raising the SDC funds for current or for new construction?
We can certainly look at that. SDC funds are based on your capital improvement plan, which is your list of projects. And then you come up to a total, and then there's a big calculation that's done. I think our current one is almost $5,000 for sewer right now. We charge about $5,000, 4,500, 4,550 per home right now for our sewer SDC.
Oh, okay, so we're pretty high up there
Yeah,
already for
yeah,
sewer
yep.
SDCs.
But as prices each year, we increase that with inflation also, because our resolution says we take this ENR, it's a standard for construction, and those SDC rates increase every year with that amount of that inflation goes. So we have been able to keep up with that. But of course, costs of things go up. And so every year we also need to look at our CIP list and see if that cost estimate is accurate. So when we get our bottom line number, we know that that's an accurate bottom line number. So that's another thing that we try to do.
Okay, yeah, I pulled this from the City of Sandy website earlier today, and in addition to the monthly fee increases, new
Mhm.
commercial and residential development projects will pay their fair share for the required sewer investments.
Right.
System development charges, which are paid by new development, were increased from $18.34 to $48.89 for
Mhm.
each new home in 2020, and are proposed to increase to $51.57 in 2021.
Yeah, Sandy was really low on both their monthly bill and I talked to their city manager when they were doing that. So they were very low.
Yeah, but they're
You
really
guys
heading
are,
up there.
in fact, at the next meeting, you get your SDC increase resolution at your next meeting. So you'll see you can kind of see what the sewer one is based on and how much that's going to go up to.
Yeah, I did see a chart on their website earlier today too, that next year their sewer rate is expected to be the second highest in the Multnomah or in the Tri-County area, just below Lake Oswego.
Mhm.
Actually, only Lake
Mhm.
Oswego is going to have a higher sewer rate than the city of Sandy. I guess at this point, I'm trying to figure out a way of not having the burden go on the people that have been here for a long time, and the people who have been in homes that maybe don't have the sewage updates that the newer homes are going to have. And I guess I would like to see us try to not increase rates on the current users as much as I would like to see us go for more of going for the new development to pay for the increase in capacity, especially.
Yeah. I don't know how you do that. charge some users and not some users
Well,
is what
then,
you're
I mean,
saying?
everyone's gonna have to pay a fair
Yeah.
share, but what I'm
But
saying
we'll
though
look
is
into
that what
that.
maybe a
Yep.
fairer share
Yeah.
of it is that the
Yeah.
newer development pays a larger portion of
Mhm.
that than the people who have been here for a long
Yeah.
time kind of thing. That's just what's going through my
Okay.
head, but, yeah, those were the main questions and,
Okay.
and statements.
Hey,
I
Joel,
wanted
you got
to make,
another
and
question?
Especially if, the executive summary, the numbers that he gave us
Right.
with the wastewater system are not accurate, I would like to have maybe those reflected more accurately in his wastewater treatment update.
Okay, Joel, go ahead.
My question was going to be a little bit to what Katie's kind of was going for there. And I think she clarified at the end that she was going for that the newer homes would be paying for a higher amount versus people that have been here. And I think the people that have been here, they're going to benefit the same as people, new people coming in. So I think a balance, we want to keep that in mind too. It's everybody's going to benefit from the new wastewater system, no matter what we do to it, lower smell, better location, wherever, one way or the other. There's going to be benefits that are going to be felt by both people, so by both long-term and new residents. So we want to keep that in mind too. I mean, I get where you're coming from, Katie. It's, we're having to expand it out because of growth. You want to put that on the new people coming into town, but at the same time, it's it really is putting a lot of burden on the new ones. We're already at the RSDCs, as you mentioned, we're up towards almost comparable with Sandy as it is. I don't really think putting that new cost or raising it up would do us much well in that area, but I think we're going to be stuck with having to put it out to the people, whether through a bond or raising the water rates. But I think if we buckle down and we really look for those grants and look for ways to raise money, like I said, by putting it into a new location and then selling extra property we don't need or something like that, that might be at least reduce the burden a little bit. So, but I think when we come down to it, it's going to have to come back to the people for some of it. There's no way we're going to get out of it without them having to pay some of it. And I think they're aware of that too. So.
Yeah, and the new houses, like the new people coming in are paying more for their house because they are paying the SDCs. So for example, if at the time we do this, we have $3 million in SDCs to bring this cost down, that's from all those new people paying that in to bring that down, maybe a $3 million. I'm hoping that we'll have $3 million by then. So it's pretty healthy. So that's one way that it will go down from those new people paying in that SDC cost, like you said. So.
Okay, and I've also heard that there's been some talk of an infrastructure bill that is being put together. There's a possibility that we could take advantage of the infrastructure bill if it were passed. I think the sewer falls into that category, and that would be a very large sum to look at. Obviously, we haven't looked at any grants yet, but that might be a way. And two, on the flip side here, I understand that it's going to be harder and harder to move a sewer plant or even get DEQ to play along at a later date when we're looking for ways to be able to accommodate the sewer. So my worry is that if we leave it where it is, and at one point we have to expand or we have to move out with another station, that we're not going to have the same advantage with DEQ. They're getting tougher and tougher each year to get access to the waterway and to be able to have your sewer. So tell us a little bit about that, Denise. What do you know?
So I know nothing about that. That's a Kurt question.
Okay.
I'll
Kurt.
ask Kurt.
All right. Kurt, we'll bring it back to us then. All right. Anybody else got any questions here? Joel, do you have any more? No? Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Give me a second to process. I feel like I have a question building in the back of my head here.
I guess if we move the plant, we've got to go through, like Sean was saying, the DEQ stuff, analysis. What kind of time frame does that take if we're looking for, to plot out a new outflow pipe?
Yeah,
would we be
it will add probably a year and a half to the
Another
project
12
to
to
get a
18
piece
months.
of property purchased and the easements and that. So, if we left it at the shop, I could see us starting as it next budget year, but it'll probably be a couple years down the road. I'd say, let me see, next year is what, 22, 23? Wow. So maybe 24, 25. It's still within that five-year time frame that he says we need to get going on it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there's time,
Okay,
but it
Joel?
will add time.
So my question is as we expand the city, we know growth is gonna happen. The income that we will be getting, if we're raising those costs on the water bill or the property taxes, have we accounted for growth? And like, as Katie mentioned, we're far above those numbers already, or maybe it was Paul, I'm sorry. We're already above those numbers that are projected. So let's just say we end up with all the homes that Katie mentioned, of 1,500 more homes come in. And we're calculating a $40 jump or $35 jump or whatever it was, depending on where we put the property. If we actually hit that much higher number than the 300 you calculated, is that going to come back and be able to settle out someone's water bill? They come maybe reduce the cost of the water bill? Or are they always going to be up there for that 20-year period that you're anticipating for an increase in cost? Because the history of what I've seen for government is once the price goes up, it never really comes back down. And so I want to make sure that if we're putting something in there, that we're not going to be setting ourselves into what is historically the government action of raise the money for raise the cost for, oh, we needed this for this to get this project done. And when that project's done, the price never changes. So
Yeah.
make sure that we're not locking ourselves into that right now as well.
Yeah, so the revenue bond, it's a 40-year loan, not a 20-year loan. So after the 40 years, yeah, you could look and see how much you could reduce it. But by that time, you're probably going to have some other upgrades. I know our water plant, we had in 95, we did a 40-year loan and we still had 12 years left on our last 40-year loan. So we had two loans. Of course, with the property tax, with the GO bond, it will fall off once you don't need that money for your payments anymore. So if you do it as a GO bond, it definitely falls off once that amount is paid back.
Okay. Joel?
Do we have comparable rates to know what other cities in our area are paying for their monthly water bill? So I don't want to also be known as a city that has twice the cost of other cities in the area too. So we want to consider that as well. So I'm just kind of curious if we raise it, are we going to be way higher, or are we going to be pretty much in line with other, especially other cities that have actually gotten new plants?
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what they did as far as jumping the price, what they're currently at right now, so we can have a comparable rates to understand what we're looking at. So
I will talk to the city of Sandy because I know they just did some rate comparisons and I'll get that from them and have for you guys.
Okay.
I think Paul had
Katie, do you got any information
Gary.
in that bundle?
Well, I mean, if her question is on this line, or first, what she's talking about is on the same line, I'm gonna change the subject a little bit, so.
No,
Okay.
I don't have a question. I was just gonna say I got the information of Sandy and comparisons for cities in the area.
Oh, they've got, okay,
Yeah,
great.
I got it from their website.
Okay, I'll get that from you and I'll look. confirm.
Okay,
Okay.
so have we gotten any input or feedback from the employees that are gonna be affected by if we move? Have we talked to the employees at all about any of this and what they,
I don't think the employees, you mean like, would they not like it if we moved?
Well, I mean, just do they have any thoughts or, anything on this change?
I can let Chris talk for him, but really none of the other employees have said much. But Chris, you can put in, I know you were saying it would be easier. And Chris would rather get it done sooner than later, being the plant operator. So
Yeah.
that's what he told me today. So he, of course, would
Well,
like
right
to.
now, we're not meeting limits. It's very hard to meet limits right now with this old plant. It's nearly 40 years old. Our biosolids is overwhelmed. I was gonna say something about the stench. I believe you, I'm there every day. But the major part of that is those lagoons that sit out there along the fence line. And we put biosolids in there and they just sit there for 6 to 8 months and they just turn horrible. And then we haul those onto farmers' fields as fertilizer. And with a new plant, with either way, there's 3 different options for plants, processes. Either one we choose, we're not going to have any lagoons, so we're not going to have that smell problem. The other smell problem is the digester. It's super small. It's overloaded every day. And we're going to size it adequately for the size of our population, and that's not going to stink as bad anymore either. And then Kurt wants to put those towers in to shoot it all up into the air. I mean, I just think it's going to be, a new facility is going to be awesome for us operators. And it depends on what one we choose. The membrane plant, which is the newest technology, latest and greatest. That'll be, you know, less maintenance, less man hours to work it, to keep it running at top notch all the time. So I think it'll be great.
How do you feel about the future? If it stays where it's at, do you feel that there's adequate space and for expansion in the future on that location?
If we go with the membrane filtration plant, yes.
Okay.
If we go with the conventional activated sludge, kind of like what we have now, no. And he's sizing it for a 6 million gallon per day plant. Right now, our max is like a 4. When we get heavy rains, 4 is max. But the average wet weather flow is under 1 MGD. So I think a 6 million gallons per day plant is sized adequately.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Joel?
You had said something earlier, Denise. You said that even if we put the plant out there in the industrial area, that the public works buildings wouldn't move, or the public works wouldn't move with them.
Mhm.
And I would like to know why we couldn't just combine them both on the same property if we chose that location.
Yeah, we could definitely do that, but there's a lot of new things at the plant that we've spent a lot of money on the last couple of years that we just feel like we would stay there and you know, utilize those things. But it definitely could be a discussion. Then we'd look at a bigger piece of property that, you know, like right now we have, I think that site is 6 acres. Is that what that
Or-
site is?
Right now,
Yeah.
8.
We have 8 acres right now. And yeah, I mean, we could, you know, if we could find 8 acres, you know, somewhere else, that would be fine. You know, I think we weren't looking at buying 8 acres if we moved out to one of the other areas, because one of the areas that has the 1 acre lots, and we thought maybe 2 would be plenty for just the shop, for just the plant. But yeah, we'd have to look at all that and see how much the extra acreage would be to be able to fit everything. But we can definitely do that.
Yeah, and I get that, and I think it's fiscally responsible to put them all together, no matter what our change is. But the reason why I take my position about, and I'm definitely, my position is for putting it out in the industrial area for a lot of different reasons. I think I've been pretty clear about that. But the reason why I'm pushing for that so hard is I'm one of the people that want to make sure that when we do it, there's no question around if it's going to cause a problem or not. If there's potentially, oh, it should be fine. I keep hearing the should and everything else in there. If we go and we get there, if we know for fact, okay, we got a large enough piece of property, we got 10 acres, 12 acres, whatever we need to in that area. And it's for sure, there's not gonna be any problems if we ever need to expand. We got all the room we need for our public works, and it's a one and done, no questions asked if it's gonna be a problem later, versus moving it across the street. Yeah, we're saving some money now, but there's always a question of, is it gonna be a problem in the future? That's always gonna be there. And we don't wanna find out 10 years from now that we made the wrong decision because we're trying to save a little bit of money, which is, yes, I'm all about fiscal responsibility and making sure we're not blowing money and definitely not raising the cost for the people. But at the same time, if we're wrong, that's going to be so much more worse. So that's why I'm pushing, and my position is that if we spend a little more now, we can know that we're not going to run into a problem later. We have that. and we're good to go for the future for the next, as long as you're paying for it, that 40-year period or 20-year period, however long this is projected out, because I keep hearing different dates. So if we get it there and we know we're good, then we don't have the question, and we know we've been fiscally responsible, even if we spent more money, because we bought that insurance, kind of, and that peace of mind for the people of Estacada. And we've solved some problems that people have been concerned about. But if we go into the property across the street and we are wrong, that's going to be so much worse, especially because when we have to go back to the people of Estacada and say, hey, I know you've been paying for this thing an extra $40 a month, but now we have to build it again somewhere else. So we have to go to this additional spot, and we're going to raise you another $40 a month or another $30 a month. Then that's going to make it even worse. So I'm looking at it from a potential risk reward position. And I think if we just go with the place that reduces that risk of being of a potential issue, that the reward is so much better than for finding out we're wrong, a decade down the road. That's why I take my position, and that's why I keep asking the questions, because I want to make sure either we are positive that if we go across the street, that we're good to go, and there's not going to be any risk that we're going to run into that problem later, versus going back out of the ways. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Katie, you have something?
Yeah, so thinking down the line, here's what I've noticed in life is that you're always going to inconvenience or upset someone. And I get where Councilor Litke is coming from about you don't want to make the wrong decision and then find out it's the wrong decision later. Well, let's just throw out the scenario of we spend a couple of $1 million more to completely move the treatment plant. Well, where are we moving it to? Because right now that's in the industrial park, but there are also, farmers and people that live around there in unincorporated Clackamas County. And those people are going to be upset and inconvenienced because, oh my gosh, the city of Estacada is moving their sewer plant really close to where I currently live. And eventually RUGB is going to be expanded, and we don't know what the future of those lands are going to be. Maybe those end up being residential. We could essentially be moving our sewage plant from what is viewed as a semi-residential area now and moving it to what is in the future going to be another residential area just, years down the line. We don't know what that's going to look like yet. So, really, you're always going to inconvenience or upset someone, no matter where it's at, if it stays here or if it moves down the line a little bit. But here's the thing is that the people here in Estacada, we've known that the sewer plant was there for a long time. And if we can say something to the people of Estacada who have been here, hey, guess what? We're going to give you a completely brand new state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant that isn't going to have all of these issues that you guys have brought up in the past, smell or whatever it be, that moving forward should make everybody happy. And then what we're not doing is going and just moving the problem from over here to over there and waiting for it down the line. I guess that was my 2 cents is, why pay the extra money to just find out that you're upsetting a completely new set of people? Whether it be the businesses in the industrial park, the people who have the land in unincorporated Clackamas County or what, but someone is going to be inconvenienced or upset somewhere, no matter where that plant is.
Joe, we got another question, and then Jerry.
I just wanted to clarify, that would be solving part of it. The biggest concern of what I had just said was not about the upsetting the people or, someone be upset about it. That's a benefit of putting it out there in industrials, that we have less chance of that, reducing that risk of having more people upset about it. But the biggest issue that I was talking about was having to later expand that because the size doesn't meet what we need, and we don't have that ability to expand or to make the changes we might need to in 10 years because, we have to make it bigger or something else change. By having a bigger area now and just building it there, spending an extra couple $1 million now might save us $10 million down the road, not having to go build another either addition to it or happen to move the plant or something. And that's what my concern is. That's what my biggest concern is. There's potential questions with the property we're looking at versus having more of a guarantee by putting it out in the industrial and knowing that we have that room to expand because we buy the right size property or bigger if we need to. So we can expand 30, 40 years down the road if we need to or whatever, upgrade it, but continue to expand out if we have to. And have that room. That's my concern. That's what I'm talking about is by planning out that far and doing it one time versus looking at, potential risk 10 years down the road that we could have mitigated now. And that's my main concern I'm trying to talk about is that piece, not necessarily. And the benefit of putting it out there is it potentially could solve a problem people have been talking about is, oh, first thing you see when you come to Estacada is a sewage plant. And it's near parks. So that it would remove that piece, yes, but that wasn't my main focus on what I just said. What I was focusing about is the potential expansion and changes we might need to down the road. We don't want to cut ourselves off at the knees now and have to dump another cost on the people later. So
Thank you, Jerry. Go ahead.
So I just want to clarify first. So we currently have 8 acres, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And the site that we're looking at in the industrial area, we're talking about 2 acres.
Well, for a plant, the size the imprints is smaller than the plant that we have now. Where the plant is now is 2 acres of that 8 acres. So that takes up about 2 acres now. And like Chris was saying, there's not going to be as many of those, sleds. So the imprint of the plant is less than the one we have now. So, but I think I think I got the gist of everyone's concerns. And so I think what I'll do is I'll have Kurt do a mock-up of how it would look on there and kind of give some identification on how big of an area this is. And I'm also going to ask Kurt, if you're building this to do 6 million gallons, what improvements would have to be done 20 years down the road if we wanted to do 2 more million gallons? Because he would know, is that another building? Is it equipment? So I'm going to ask him those questions on if we have to expand, is there room here? I'm going to get down to that. And even not here, but anywhere, is 8 acres enough?
Okay.
Or do we need 10 eventually? Or do we need 15?
And then
So that's going to be my conversation with him.
Okay.
Yeah, and then one more question I wanted to add in there. Our city's growing at such a rate, and we are increasing the equipment that Public Works has to have to function in our city. So my question to you is, because you're going to have both on the same site, are we going to be able to accommodate all the new equipment that we are buying for the city and the Public Works and the sewer plant all in one area? To me, it doesn't seem like in 10 years, we're going to be looking at that going, oh, you know what? The Public Works is still fitting in there at this rate of growth. I mean, as well as I do, the houses are going in. We're getting new parks every day. You're going to have several more pieces of equipment coming in. We've got to have a place big enough to accommodate all of these at the same time, or we're going to be building something, whether it be a Public Works building or another sewer plant. My theory here is that we do it all at once. So this can all be on one location. You can look at Canby's spread, and it's quite large. They have their Public Works buildings and they have their sewer plant. In fact, Melanie showed me today the map of their system, and it is beautiful. It's a large area. It would seem to me that if we want to conquer all this at one time and make sure that our Public Works people have enough space to function and we have the equipment in place, this is the time to be talking this talk. So anyway, that's just something to add, but I know you all have your.
We'll add that. Yep.
I just wanted to add one thing. I thought I had read it a while back, but just that was mentioned on page 113, just potential construction problems, and just to kind of maybe some food for thought that they had mentioned relocation of the treatment facility to a new site will expedite and simplify the construction process. So I think that had been touched upon maybe at last meeting. So maybe something to think about that, would be a pro or benefit to moving.
That's going to happen regardless. We aren't going to do it on the same site that it's at now. He meant if we tried to build it right where it was and around that, but if we move it somewhere else, then we can keep that site going. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll happen either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm very much measure twice, cut once kind of a
Yeah,
person,
yeah.
But again, there's a lot of multiple factors where you don't want to put such a financial burden on the people of Estacada. I mean, we're going to have to anyway, but just trying to find some options that are going to be make it affordable, but also we can make it happen and make it happen long-term.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you, Charity. Katie, you have a question?
Yeah, and all of the figures that we're looking at number wise, I assume that they're all building this new wastewater treatment plant, but do any of these figures that we're looking at include the decommission and deconstruction or
No.
tear down of the
No.
old plant?
No, that will be wherever we put it, that will be an additional cost.
I am
Yep.
curious to know what the cost of decommissioning and deconstructing that plant is. I only ask because if we were to procure a new spot and move the entire plant and the old area, well, I guess it's still going to be public works. We're really not ever planning on getting rid of that area. And I guess I'm just afraid of there being another old mill in Estacada that's going to sit vacant and be a decrepit building for the next 30 years. That just kind of falls apart after, people go in there and tear it apart brick by brick by brick. And I'm afraid of our old wastewater treatment plant becoming the new old mill. So I would really like to know what the cost of decommissioning and deconstructing that area is, especially if we are planning on completely vacating it and not using it for any wastewater treatment at all.
And Joel, you got a question?
Yeah, a couple things. First, looking at this actually the same page. I was looking at this here and it mentioned just about halfway the page says if the plant is located in the northern industrial area, an additional 2.5 million would be needed for new river outfall and real estate. So that only looks like we only need 2.5 million. I'm not sure where the 5 million number came from, but according to the report,
I think that same paragraph shows then also the new outfall. So you have some pump stations at 2.5 million and the outfall at 2-something million.
it's included in the same statement. Outfall and real estate.
The land.
Yeah, it probably doesn't include the cost.
It says real estate in
No,
there.
none of this includes the cost of land, but if you look at page, where was that?
Well, I'll read it again. An additional 2.5 million would be needed for a new river outfall and real estate.
So, yeah, locating the plant on the public works shop site results in savings of approximately 2.3 million in pump station and force main improvements and saves an additional 2.5 million in reusing the existing outfall. So if you look down at the chart below, you see that 2.155 on the pump stations that you wouldn't have to do. And then the outfall, and then the 1.3,
All right, it just seems a little contradictory, I guess.
yeah. So,
So
but I'll check into all those numbers.
yeah,
I'll check into all those numbers.
that's fine. I did kind of lost my train. Oh yeah, so regarding the properties, if we'd have multiple options if those are vacated. We could either we could reconstruct them slightly and turn them into part of the portal park. We could sell the properties for, I think that's probably an industrial type of spot location there. I don't know what the zoning is. I'm assuming it's industrial, right? What the zoning is on the properties there?
Public Works
I
building?
didn't hear what he said.
No, what the zoning on the
It's
property?
industrial.
It's industrial.
No, the current shop is water, what is it? Riverfront commercial.
That's right.
Okay, riverfront commercial. So riverfront commercial, I mean, that's usually prime for a lot of different businesses to come in. So, I mean, there's options there. We can put the properties up for sale. And
Yep.
honestly, if you sell them, I mean, I don't know what the wastewater treatment part, what would be required for, legal purposes to take it down. But even if you sell the property without fully deconstructing it, we just do what we're supposed to for, to make sure that we
Yeah.
whatever. You might be able to sell the property and the owner deconstruct it and do their own thing, put money towards, again, offsetting the cost of moving it. So that might save us money from deconstructing it and, put money towards the
Yeah.
cost. And of course,
Things-
that doesn't happen overnight. I know that, so.
Yeah. Things are moving very quickly down there. That they've been that vacant, couple acres down there for as long as I've lived here. And then the Forest Service, of course, has been vacant for, a couple years now, and it's in the same zone and there's been no bites on that. So, but definitely we could look at selling. It just, I don't know how fast or how, where your thing would come from.
Well, and I just want to throw back out there, the old mill has been for sale for
Yeah.
as long as it's been vacant as well. And nobody has wanted to spend their pretty penny to come in and decommission that place on their own, which is why here we are in 2021. It's still a vacant lot for sale.
Yeah, we'll have to decommission. We'll have to put out the money to clean that
Yeah,
property up,
Chris,
no
did you have
matter
a
what it
question there?
takes, but-
If we do move the plant up to the industrial campus, we're still gonna need a pump station at the
Yeah.
existing wastewater plant. So I don't know if you'd be able to sell that, the pump station there.
Yeah, we still need, if we move the
gonna be our
plant,
property.
there'll have to be a pump station at the site now to pump everything, because everything that goes into there would need to be pumped to wherever the new thing is. So there would be a portion of it we could sell, but some of it we could sell, yeah.
Yeah, and then selling may not even, like I said, may not be the best option there. I'm just saying that it can be reused or sold as an option. And you do got points. There are properties in the area that, I think the forestry area is $2.5 million. And so that's a big chunk of change to dish out. But we have the option, if we have a property, we can also subdivide it into smaller lots. We can make a decision as a council to do so and then sell those at lower prices, which would attract more people. But that's getting into another conversation. But the whole point is, I'm saying is, we wouldn't be just holding dead lots. I don't think we could do something with them.
I think so.
So any more questions pertaining to this that Denise might be able to help us with? Or Chris? No? Did all your questions get answered? Okay, Denise, I'm gonna throw this at you for a minute. Is there anything else that you can think of that we might want to know about?
Nope, but I'll get some answers for you.
All right, great. We appreciate it. So can we set this up for a comeback or how are we gonna do
Yeah,
this?
yeah, we'll get answers and get back together, maybe just at a regular meeting, and so there's more public, but I'm also looking at doing the suggestions of doing a online survey and maybe an open house to get input from the community, and also maybe having Matt do a survey of the industrial users.
Good, good, thank you. Joel, did you have one more question?
I think also sending in the water bill, since they're the ones paying for it, it might be good to send it out in the water bill too. As a survey as well, so.
Okay, I want to thank all of you for making time tonight for this meeting so we could get a better handle on what we're dealing with there. I know this is a big expense for everyone. And obviously the taxpayers, I never take that lightly when it comes to this amount of money, but I want to make sure we do this once and we do it right. And nobody ever questions if we made the right decision that one night. So that is why I'm so intense about this subject, and I want us to get all the information we can. But in that, I want to end this meeting with a plea that everybody, tomorrow is a planning and land use meeting at 6 o'clock. I really need everybody to try to make it to that. It's valuable information and we need everybody there to understand how our planning and land use works here. So please try to make it. And other than that,
We
that's
still
all I
have another
Yeah,
agenda
yeah.
item.
Sean, we're not ending the meeting yet.
We have the ARPA funding to
Oh, yeah,
talk
yeah, I
about.
know. Okay,
Yeah,
that's right.
okay.
Sorry about that. Go ahead. We're going into the next part. I was just practicing.
Invite me.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
So how much did we get?
any
Should have
more?
known that. A little over 400,000, right? So we received about 418,000 this year. We'll get the same amount next year. I put in the guidelines for everyone to see what you can spend on. Some of the bigger cities have had a lot of revenue recovery, but we really didn't have too much of that. So it was mostly cities that have the transient tax that they didn't get it during COVID because no one was traveling and no one was staying and hotels were shut down. So that's a big chunk of a lot of people's revenue stream, and it's just not ours. So the part that I think that we will look at is the infrastructure, because you can use it for infrastructure other than streets, which is kind of a downer because streets is always hard to find money to do. But since we have so many great projects lined up, I thought, if I'm going to throw out some suggestions, and I'd like to hear from the council, any suggestions. So there's a couple things that we ran into with the Wade Creek Park. We ran into an overage of, because the muck was hard to determine how much was under there at the time. So it was about a $200,000 change order to remove muck, get it dried out, to reuse it. And it just took longer, and there was more in there than they thought. So, and we're working around this, but so one of the things that you can spend this on is community rooms that will be open for the community for educational purposes, and especially having any connection to the library, which our community room is going to be run by the library and through the library. So I thought maybe a part of that money, a couple $100,000, could be used for the community room. And then the other one is, we have the water reservoir that we're going to be funding. We do have enough money to fund the water reservoir, but it would be nice not to deplete that fund all the way down. So, but there could be some smaller projects that someone else has in mind. We got the funding, thanks to the mayor, for our the pump station for the high level reservoir that we're completing. And we also did the what was the other name of that other? Oh yeah, the UV disinfection, and we've spent the money on that. So I thought the second half, which is, almost half of it, well, it's a little over 400,000, we could use for the wastewater treatment plant when we get the second half of that, along with hopefully about 3 million in SDCs, anything we could throw out. And I'm pretty sure we will get a grant loan for that wastewater treatment plant, because Business Oregon and the USDA, they have those programs. And I think definitely they try to help the small rural communities. So I think that we'll be able to get this plant, even though to me, $20 million is like, whoa, with it. We've never done anything that expensive while I've been here. But I think, my goal would be to get, of course, I'm not going to be here, but my goal would be that the city could get half of that in grants and loan, or grants and money like this. And maybe that infrastructure fund that the mayor was talking about, look into that if that comes out here in the next year or two. So anyway, those are my ideas, but kind of talk about it and throw out other suggestions.
Okay, Joel, you got a question?
A couple ideas and / questions. Can some of that money be used for, lighting and stuff in sidewalks? I know it can't be put it on roads, but we put sidewalks in. But light
Used for what? I'm sorry.
Sorry, my voice is starting to go away. For lighting, like sidewalk lighting, ADA type of needs, or like sidewalks and things like that. Can we use the money for that?
I don't think so, but I will definitely look into that.
Okay.
Sidewalk lighting and ADA stuff.
And I know that the community is a big thing that's to have on there. A long time ago, there was a project that was proposed, but then nothing ever happened with it. And that was a splash pad. And over the last year, I've heard more about a splash pad requests from different people, and wanting to know if that's ever going to happen or anything else. So this might be an opportunity for us to put the splash pad in somewhere.
Yeah,
So
we definitely can't do a splash pad, but
okay, that
just
would be
an update on that so you can tell people. So I'm making a list for my predecessor, and they want, so I have the list of projects that need to get done. And the next thing after Wade Creek Park for park SDCs, to me anyway, is finishing Campanella Park, which will include the spray park. So that's next on the list. I mean, it's gonna come, but it might be a couple years before we can get funding for that, but it's the next thing. As soon as we get done with this Wade Creek Park, that's the next priority in the park plan. So it's coming. It's not going to go away.
All right, so yeah, I'd really love to hear then if we could put that towards like ADA style stuff, where like more proper, like for example, I think there was a vision impaired person that almost got hit by a car the other day crossing the street. because, you know, we don't have good signals for people when they cross the street to get their attention and stuff. So things that we can do for like road crossings, lighting, sidewalks where there's no sidewalks, things like that is what is a big thing that we definitely need in our city, because we don't really have a really ADA friendly city. So.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else have a question out there? I can't see the hand, so you're gonna have to tell me. There you go, Katie.
Not a question. I'm just gonna throw out there. I really don't want to see our sewer rates in the city of Estacada do what the sewer rates have done and are expected to do in the city of Sandy. I would like to see us throw any and all money that we can from outside sources to the wastewater treatment plant, so that eventually when we go to the taxpayers and say, hey, you guys, we had to take out a loan and now that loan has to be paid back, that loan ultimately is smaller, so that the burden on the taxpayers is a lower burden. Again, I really don't want to become the city of Sandy. I'm looking at the sewer rates that are scheduled to increase year after year after year for the city of Sandy. They experienced that 98% increase last year, 13% this year, which I think they ultimately delayed. But then next year, they're expecting a 15% increase. In 2023, a 14% increase. In 2024, another 14%. And year on until we finally get to 2026, their increase is only 7%, followed by 6%, 6%, and then 4%. But basically by 2030, the city of Sandy is more than doubling their base rate or their volume rate for their
Sewer.
wastewater, for their
Yeah.
sewer. And for someone in Estacada who, you know, we pay, I mean, average $60 a month for our water bill. If we end up having to go to our taxpayers the way that Sandy has had to go to their taxpayers, we could be looking at water bills of $120 or more a month. And that's a big chunk of change for someone who might be living on a fixed income, for example.
Yeah, the city of Sandy had to increase theirs even to get a loan, because the loan people look at your rates. And I think we're pretty good, although Kurt, we haven't raised our sewer rates for 3 years, and Kurt said we should probably do a small raise just so we stay up to, so we are going to look at that and maybe bring that to you in the end of October or November.
I
So
have the historic raises too from the city of Sandy, and they increased their water and sewer rates very minimally over the last decade, or really since 2019. And then have only been increasing 6%, 6%, 4%, 3% here and there as years have progressed.
yeah,
But then now they're in
Yeah,
critical
yeah,
mode, and oh, I'm so sorry, we have to double your sewage rate.
Right, right.
That's a pretty, and 98% is a pretty hefty increase. So for me, I just say that whenever we get money from outside sources, we should just be throwing it all toward the wastewater treatment plant, and that's my honest to God opinion.
Okay, Joel and then Paul.
All right, so just to confirm, since we won't be starting the sewer plant until probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years from now, getting that built and moving along, we can't put the money that's currently on the table right now towards that, or can we?
yeah, we can. I think this money we have until 2024 to use. So
Okay.
yeah, we have quite a ways to use this money. So,
Okay,
yep,
then that might be a good idea then.
yeah.
Paul?
Looking over the initial things that you came up with, Denise, the putting the money towards Wade Creek. As I was reading through what you can and can't do with the money, that's the first thing that came to my mind,
Yeah.
because it all seemed to point towards that. So I like the idea of Wade Creek offsetting some of the overages that we've come in there. Water reservoir, I feel like if we've got the money set aside for that, we've got the money set aside. Let's just use it for that. Definitely like putting money towards the wastewater treatment plant as well too. Anything that we can do to offset burdens on our folks in the future. But I do feel like Joel brought up some good ideas there about lighting and ADA improvements as well too. There might be just a few great projects that we can do around town that may not cost a ton of money, but we really don't have anything set aside for that now. And maybe we could set up something for that and hit those.
Yeah, look into those.
Yeah.
Okay, Katie?
Speaking of lighting, you and I had a conversation several weeks
Mhm.
back about lighting. I sent you a picture of what Elm Street looks like
Yeah.
at nighttime. Have we
Yeah.
had any? recent
PGE
conversations?
has it on their list for those 10 poles to get lights up on all 10 of those poles along Elm and Lakeshore.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do we know how soon?
The one at the Harmony, when we put one up, it was only a couple months, so I'll have Melanie check with them.
I
about
would
that.
love an update. I mean, especially since there are so many car break-ins that have been happening recently, and really all of those car break-ins are happening in the dark areas. And if you've ever looked down at the Lakeshore neighborhood, there are so many dark areas, and I'd love to, get rid of those dark alleys so that we don't have,
Yeah.
the nefarious people, the bad
Mhm.
actors hanging in those dark corners and committing nefarious acts. And really, that's what crime prevention through environmental
Mhm.
design is all about, is if you don't want people hiding in dark corners, get rid of the
Yeah.
dark corners. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if we already have a partnership with PGE
Mhm.
of, hey, here's a pole, can you stick a light on
Yeah,
it?
they have no problem with putting lights on existing poles. That's what we did at River Mill, at the corner of River Mill, where there was no light to turn and you wouldn't know where to turn. And
Yeah.
we also did it by Harmony Baking. They had there were no lights on that half a block, so we had those put up too. So yeah,
And we don't
they're,
have to pay any money for that.
you
do we?
pay monthly for those lights once they're up, but you don't pay for them to put them up.
The city does.
Oh, okay.
The city pays for
City pays,
the
yeah.
light bill. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
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 Well, if that's kind of something that we can already work with our
Mhm.
existing partners, I love the idea of increasing lighting throughout the city.
Mhm.
Maybe Joel or somebody that he works with can go around the city and identify
Mhm.
the poles that would be most effective in
Yeah.
bringing the lighting, and we can just go to
Yep.
PGE directly and work with them on installing new lights.
Yep.
And then we don't even have to throw funding at that, but we're still killing that bird with that stone, because that is a very important stone and a very important
Yeah.
bird. So,
Yep.
yeah, I love it. Thank you for talking to PGE about that
Mhm.
too.
You're
Denise,
welcome.
because it's a nightmare on Elm
Yeah,
Street.
it's
no pun
really.
intended. So-
Hey, Joel, you have a question?
Along with the lines of what Katie said, it might be a good thing to actually point the DEIC at, is to work with the community to identify those locations, because that's part of what they're there for, is to identify those locations and work with the community and have them bring forth some suggestions on where we can put those lightings and those cross streets and things like that. And there's a lot of members in the community they can reach out to that can give some valuable feedback to that committee, and then they can bring back some suggestions to the council.
Oh, and just also to add about the ARPA funding, to kind of get back, it will be, the DEI committee has finished their equity lens. And one important thing about these federal dollars is that it goes through an equity lens to be sure it is equitable to all in the community. So they will be, once we have the projects, they'll be able to experiment with their equity lens, because they haven't got to use it yet. And they will put it through that and be sure that we can say to the federal government, because we have to make reports on what you use the money for, that it was put through that for so whatever. And the sewer, both of those things are gonna basically be open to the whole community. So I can't see it not going through, but we will be doing that too.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right. Any more questions on the ARPA funds?
So I'll put something together and come back to you guys with some things, and maybe not at the next meeting, but there's not a real hurry, but it's kind of nice to know what we're looking forward to. So.
Sure. Well, we appreciate all the information. It was a lot to talk about. Do you need any kind of, lock in for the ARPA funds at this point, or is that something we can just bring back?
No, I just wanted to get it out there and have people start thinking about it. So.
Okay, great.
If
Thank
you
you.
guys come up with anything on either of these, please email me, and that way I can get them added to any other questions that you have.
Okay, Joe, you got one more question?
Yeah, since we're going to be reaching out to the community for information anyways regarding the sewer treatment plant, maybe we can add a second part of the survey to ask them, hey, here's some limitations what we can do with it, but maybe the community has some ideas that they can come up with that we're not thinking of that might be a really good fit. Can we add that into the survey and see if they had any ideas?
I mean, I think that it's very complicated because even these, so I think if, once we come up with maybe some suggested projects to get approved, you know, a survey, what of these do you like? But I don't know, throwing it out to, I mean, it might just be a lot of work for staff to be getting these surveys back from, because I really don't even understand it completely yet and have to go back for questions. So it would be different if it was an easy thing to, but let me think about that, Joel, and I'll get back to you on that. How we could maybe do that.
Okay.
It's
right.
it's a very complicated, you'd think they would just give us the money, but
It doesn't work that way. It never works.
yeah,
that way.
I think our attorney's gonna have to actually be the last one to look at these, but yeah, anyway. I'll look into that. I'll think about that.
Okay, great. Well, we thank you for spending your evening with us. We appreciate staff for bringing everything to us. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to this before I close this? Katie, do you have something else?
I just wanted to recognize that today is officially the first Indigenous Peoples' Day in the state of Oregon, and I just wanted to recognize that here sitting in the office. I just wanted to throw that out there and say Happy Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else to throw out there? No? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.